When everyone is moving in one direction, most people don't stop to ask why. They follow, not because they are weak, but because agreement feels safe. But there are some individuals who react differently. The moment something becomes widely accepted, they pause. Not to rebel for the sake of it, but to think, and that pause changes everything. Because psychologically, the people who don't follow the crowd are not just making different choices. They are operating from a completely different mental framework. There's a certain kind of person who becomes more alert when something is popular. Not necessarily skeptical, but aware. They don't assume the majority is wrong, but they also don't assume it's right. While others feel comfort in consensus, these individuals feel the need to step back and evaluate. From the outside, this can look like stubbornness or contrarian behavior. But internally, it is driven by something deeper, the need for cognitive autonomy. At its core, going against the crowd is closely tied to independent thinking. The human brain naturally relies on social cues to make decisions. If many people believe something, it reduces the need to analyze it deeply. This is efficient, but it comes with a trade-off. It can suppress individual judgment. People who tend to go against the crowd are less comfortable with this trade-off. They experience a subtle tension when accepting something without understanding it. Agreement without analysis feels incomplete. This creates a different relationship with conformity. For most individuals, conformity acts as a form of psychological safety. It reduces risk, minimizes conflict, and increases social acceptance. But for those who resist the crowd, conformity can feel like a loss of control. It introduces the possibility of adopting beliefs or behaviors that are not fully their own. As a result, they develop a habit of mental distancing. When an idea becomes popular, they instinctively step back, not to reject it, but to examine it from outside the influence of the group. Over time, this pattern strengthens self-reliance in decision-making. These individuals become accustomed to forming opinions without relying heavily on external validation. They learn to trust their reasoning, even when it is not reinforced by others. This does not always mean they are confident in a visible way. Their confidence is often internal, built through repeated experiences of thinking independently and accepting the consequences of those decisions. Another trait that often develops is a higher tolerance for social discomfort. Going against the crowd rarely happens without friction. Disagreement, misunderstanding, or subtle exclusion are common outcomes. Most people instinctively avoid these situations because they threaten social belonging. But individuals who frequently choose independent paths become more familiar with this discomfort. Over time, it loses its intensity. They are not immune to it, but they are less controlled by it. This tolerance changes how they interact socially. They are less likely to adjust their opinions simply to maintain harmony. This can make them appear distant or difficult, but it often reflects a different priority. For them, internal consistency matters more than external agreement. They are willing to accept short-term tension in exchange for long-term alignment with their own thinking. There is also a strong connection between this behavior and identity formation. People who follow the crowd tend to derive part of their identity from group belonging. In contrast, those who resist it often build identity through differentiation. They define themselves not by similarity, but by distinction. This does not mean they reject all group identities. It means they are more selective about which ones they accept. Interestingly, this tendency is not always rooted in confidence. In some cases, it begins as a reaction to past experiences. Individuals who have felt misunderstood, pressured, or misled by group dynamics may develop a heightened awareness of social influence. They learn that consensus does not always equal correctness. This creates a more cautious approach to collective thinking. Over time, this caution evolves into independence. Another important trait is deeper analytical processing. Because these individuals do not rely heavily on social shortcuts, they often engage more directly with information. They question assumptions, explore alternatives, and consider multiple perspectives before forming conclusions. This leads to more nuanced thinking, but it also requires more cognitive effort. Independent thinking is not easier, it is more demanding. This demand can sometimes create isolation, not necessarily physical, but cognitive. When someone consistently evaluates ideas differently from the majority, they may feel out of sync with common perspectives. Conversations can feel surface level, and shared assumptions may not feel shared at all. This is one of the less visible costs of going against the crowd. Independence increases clarity, but it can reduce immediate connection. At the same time, it can also deepen certain types of relationships. When these individuals do connect with others who value independent thought, the interaction tends to be more meaningful. The focus shifts from agreement to exploration. Conversations become less about confirming beliefs and more about understanding them. This creates a different quality of connection, less frequent but more substantial. There is also a link between this behavior and resistance to manipulation. People who automatically follow the crowd are more susceptible to influence, especially when that influence is framed as popular or widely accepted. In contrast, individuals who question consensus are less likely to be influenced by social proof alone. They require additional validation, logic, evidence, or personal relevance. This makes them more resistant to trends, persuasion, and external pressure. However, this resistance can also have a downside. Constantly questioning the majority can lead to overcorrection. Some individuals begin to reject ideas not because they are flawed, but because they are popular. This shifts independence into opposition. The goal becomes being different, rather than being accurate. When this happens, the behavior is no longer about thinking independently. It becomes another form of reacting to the group, just in the opposite direction. Maintaining balance is key. True independence is not about always disagreeing. It is about evaluating without bias. Sometimes the crowd is correct. Sometimes it is not. The difference lies in how the conclusion is reached. People who develop healthy independent thinking are able to align with the majority when it makes sense, without feeling like they are losing their individuality. Another subtle trait is a different perception of risk. Most people associate risk with standing out. Being different increases the chance of failure or rejection. But individuals who are comfortable going against the crowd often reinterpret risk. For them, the greater risk is following something blindly. The fear is not being wrong, it is being unexamined. This shift changes their behavior. They are more willing to take unconventional paths because those paths feel more aligned with their understanding. Over time, this creates a stronger sense of internal stability. Decisions are not constantly adjusted based on external feedback. Instead, they are anchored in personal reasoning. This reduces internal conflict, even if it increases external friction. The individual may face disagreement from others, but they experience less doubt within themselves. Ultimately, people who prefer to go against the crowd are not simply trying to be different. They are responding to a deeper need for autonomy in how they think and decide. Their behavior reflects a different balance between social influence and personal judgment. While most people lean toward agreement as a default, they lean toward evaluation. And once you understand that, their behavior stops looking like resistance. It starts looking like intention. Because going against the crowd is not about rejecting others. It's about refusing to let others think for you.